I'm Julian Minensone, and come on, Titans fans. This is a safe space. You can let it out.
And I'm Brad Hopkins, and rearranging the chairs on the Titanic never stopped it from sinking.
Tighten up. It's the Titans Squad. Everything Tennessee Titans, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Music City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Titans Squad Show starts now.
And welcome to the Titans Squad Show. I'm Julian Minensone along with Brad Hopkins, two-time Pro Bowler. Tough day in Titan land today as they fall to the Houston Texans on the road, 26-0. And as a result, the Titans fall to 0-4 on the season. Obviously, a lot to get into with this matchup. We want to welcome you here with us. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And listen to us wherever you get your podcast. That's here on YouTube Live and, of course, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get the audio. We are here for you Titans fans because I know you are looking for some therapy on this particular Sunday. B-Hop, I'm going to start right off the bat because there's a lot to get to, even though the Titans didn't give us a lot to talk about. Well, a lot to talk about in the negative side, I should say. What was your initial reaction from today?
Well, first off, I have an issue with the Titans because they're actually putting my mom's health at risk. She's a diehard Titans fan since we moved here from Houston, and just listening to her today, the frustration, how upset she actually was. I thought they were going to give her a heart attack. I promise you I did.
Not Mama Hopkins.
Yes, Mama Hopkins was not happy. And then she's looking at me like, what are the answers, So, I'm listening to Brian Callahan talk about how they prepared during the week. And honestly, the games are won during the week. It's the preparation that you put into it, right? It's getting things down so that way you execute the plays on Sunday. That's what the week is designed to do. And if you listen to Brian and company, they were excited about the opportunity to go on the road, first of three, and to start out in a place that they've had some success before, in Houston. Right.
So the last time they won the game was there last year.
Right. And for the longest time during the game, it was back and forth, 6-0 at half. Neither team had been in the red zone. Saw 2 field goals by the Houston Texans, 2 missed field goals by the Titans. But yet this was a game still to be had by either side. Right. And then it just slowly started disappearing. The 20 points unanswered in the fourth quarter by the Texans pretty much cemented the deal. Right. But I'm just thinking about going back to what they were talking about, execution and the willingness to fight is what Brian Callahan talked about in his post-game press conference. The fact that he doesn't feel that he's lost the locker room, that these guys still believed in themselves. And I honestly agree with him. That's the only thing I can go by. For when you got off the plane in Houston, you thought you had a chance to win. This was a team that was struggling just as much as you were. They hadn't won a game yet either. Matter of fact, they hadn't even had a rushing touchdown until today. So the struggle was real for a team that had more expectation on it within this division than the Titans did. So there's enough blame to go all the way around. Both sides of the football, you can say that they need to get healthy, missing a few key players. J.C. Latham on the right side, he'll be definitely welcomed back. Tajay Spears, may come in and add a different element to that offense than what Tony Pollard was doing. But Tony Pollard had a couple of explosive chunk plays today that I thought really made the difference if they could have gotten more of that, right? But the Titans really couldn't get into a rhythm today. They really couldn't stay on the field long enough. Time of possession was an issue. I think the Texans had the ball 20 more minutes than the Titans did. And those ultimately created the issues that we saw. Obviously, when you can't convert third down, I think that's obviously going to be an issue. It lent to them, the time of possession lent to them the number of plays. I think they had 46 total plays, 45 total plays. That's not enough to win a ball game, especially on the road. So there's a lot there to unpack, Julian, but that was my first thoughts.
My initial reaction, and let me know, because I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here with you. At the start of the season, B-Hop, I think the realistic fan would say that they were going to be 0-4 at this point, most likely, right? But I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm like, and the way they're playing, they're not giving me confidence that they can win any game right now, the way that things are going. You mentioned no rhythm. No consistency to put those drives together. I mean, Cam said it in the post-game press conference in the quotes circling around. We are cheeks, is what he said, for lack of a better term. They didn't even get in the red zone today. I mean, and Callahan talked about it, and I want to get your take on this because he said, and Cam said it as well, that it's coming down to execution and not the plan. He thinks the plan is good enough and that the players are just not executing. But from what you're seeing in your perspective as a former player, B-Hop, how much is it the execution of the players versus the actual plan that Callahan and the rest of the coaching staff is putting into place? Because, I got to tell you, at some point, I know the roster isn't the greatest roster in the world, but they're not getting the most out of this roster at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, 100% it's about execution. I'm not sure what Titans fans were expecting with a new play caller, but that's what you got. Bo Hardigree, the quarterback coach for the Titans, was the one that actually had the play calling in his hands. It wasn't Brian Callahan putting that offense in position. But what do we see? 0 points and 11 yards. Like you mentioned, never made it into the red zone. The Titans converted only 2 third downs today. 46 plays. The Texans had 65, 93 passing yards for the Titans, 224 passing yards for the Texans, 82 rushing yards for the Titans, 129 rushing yards for the Texans. The Texans held the ball 20 more minutes than the Titans. So at the end of the day, the things that they were practicing during the week, the things that they felt confident were going to work, when they looked at the tape for the last 3 weeks and saw this Texans team that was struggling, there were some things that they put together that they thought they could take advantage, right? It didn't happen. So while we're talking about Brian, losing the locker room, or even like him getting testy with one of the
guys with Paul Karski, yeah.
I see. I wouldn't even go there. I wouldn't even mention his name. Typically,
Yeah.
But the point was, it will always come down to execution. You've heard me say this a million times. Every play that's called is designed to win. It's designed to get into the end zone. Now, what happens after the ball is snapped? Execution or the defense making a play. If the defense doesn't make a play and the play is executed like it's supposed to, what happens? They score. But something in there happens, either breakdown in execution or somehow the defense makes a play, which obviously they're going to do. That's a defense for a reason. I mean, and the offense would be exhausted if every single thing that they ran scored a touchdown. That's just not reality. But by design, the plays are made to do that. But there's always going to be something that breaks down in the play. And unfortunately for the Titans, things broke down more than they actually were able to be put together today.
And that's the thing that I think maybe got misconstrued throughout the week when Callahan gave up the play calling. It's not like the offense changed. It's still his offense. It's still his playbook. There was just going to be a different trigger man for it. I will say, at least from a game operation standpoint, because that was the reason Callahan gave up the play calling, was to focus on game management. There wasn't any issues, it seemed, on that end. And I guess the part that's so frustrating about this, B-Hop, is the penalties were down this week. They only had 4 penalties. The sacks were down this week. There was only 2 sacks. And it seemed like that despite all that, then there's other things that then pop up where it feels like you're hitting your lowest of low for the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, they've got 2 great pass rushers in Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Now, Danielle had a couple of sacks, but like you mentioned, this is a team that to this point has given up 17 sacks in 4 weeks. But that wasn't a problem today. Not as much as it had been in the past. We didn't see them shooting themselves in the foot, creating the sins that they talked about in the regular beginning of the season, right? We didn't see a whole bunch of that. It was, 2 of 7 for your favorite receiver, Alec Ayamanor. 2 of 3 for Calvin Ridley. We saw a couple of plays where, he really made a difference in that offense. But I think 3 targets is just not enough for a guy that's supposed to be one of your best players. And when you go back to what was stated by the teams, the players and coaches alike, they said what? We have to get the best out of our best players. And that didn't happen today. L'Jarius Sneed was a liability today. Let's just be honest.
Don't even get me started on that guy, man.
And here's another guy that was highly compensated, Dan Moore, another highly compensated guy, gave up a sack, just at the wrong time. It's never a good time to give up a sack. Trust me, I know.
Yeah.
But in this instance, you're trying to mount something of a comeback or trying to get some momentum, and you just, you step on your beep, and it's just one of those things that you just, you have to overcome. But there was just too much of that. And there was too little offensive output. Now, I saw a couple of times where Jeffrey Simmons was disruptive, getting the sack, getting in the backfield. Hell, Cody Barton had a sack today if it wasn't called back for L'Jarius's holding call. So there were some plays that were made on both sides of the football, but just too few and too far in between the two.
I wanted to mention Jeffrey Simmons because earlier in the week, we heard him say the best players need to play like the best players. Well, he seemed to be the only best player that showed up like a best player because there were times where he was the best player on the field. You could see, though, defensively, though they kept him in the game for a majority of this B-Hop, you could just sense that it was going to break at some point. And you mentioned the time of possession. When you can't move the chains offensively, you're going to get your defense gassed and worn down. And it seems like they finally broke kind of at the end, despite them making plays at least early on and keeping them in the game.
Yeah, they were in this ball game 6-0, 2 field goals. There wasn't a touchdown scored in the first half. As a matter of fact, the Texans didn't even get into the red zone until the very last play of the third quarter. So it just went to show you that this was a defensive struggle back and forth. There really wasn't a whole bunch of offensive output by either offense. But then when it came down to it, at the end of the day, the Texans were able to wear down the Titans defense, put together drives that kept them on the field, and then start putting touchdowns on the board. As a matter of fact, I think they were 2 for 2 once they did finally get into the red zone. Once they were able to move the football, then we started to see them feel better, feel stronger about their momentum and what they were able to do in the ball game. So the Titans never really had that opportunity. They never really found that chemistry, that rhythm that they need to have those big best players that you mentioned be a part of the game plan, right? There was just not that many opportunities because of them only completing 2 third downs. Excuse me, sorry about that.
Bless you, Titans got you sick, huh?
One more. I always sneeze in twos.
Don't worry, viewers. He's just allergic to bad football. That's it. That's all it is.
I'm not gonna go there with you, but either way, I see what you're saying. It's just, and that's the frustrating part, right? Because you're figuring at some point in time. Put it this way, the Texans were just relishing at this opportunity to play a game against a team that was struggling as much as they were. And now maybe the pundits did have the Titans not winning a game up until week 4 or 5 or whatever, and they were right. We've gone up against a couple of teams that were in the playoffs last year, a couple of teams that are playing extraordinarily well right now. I think the Colts are on their way to maybe even getting the W out there against the Matthew Stafford-led Los Angeles Rams, another team we lost to, which lends to what? It lends to how good these teams actually are that we played to this point. But this team today was a team that in the first half showed you they're beatable. And as a matter of fact, if the Titans were able to take full advantage of the momentum that they had in that first half, they would have gotten their first W today, but it didn't bounce their way.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, B-Hop, but then I'm looking at teams like the Saints today. They competed, right? Teams like the Giants who snuck out a win with a guy Jackson Dart getting his first start. How come it just doesn't seem like at least that the Titans are? I don't know. I know you mentioned that they were kind of in the game at the start of it, but it just didn't feel like that they had a real legitimate shot, even with being in the game to me.
It all comes down to the details, the little things. We saw them make explosive plays, and then we saw them nullified. We saw them, in the run game, give Tony Pollard 80 yards or something like that on the ground?
Yeah, he had some spurts there. Yeah,
exactly. Ellick had one that was thrown behind him that maybe he could have caught, but it was a tip, ended up being an interception, ended up turning into a touchdown. So those little things are the things that make the difference in every single ball game. The team that makes the fewest amount of mistakes has the best chance to win. Very rarely can you overcome those issues and all of a sudden come out the winner. It just doesn't happen that way. And we've seen the Titans all but too often in the first 4 weeks of the season commit those mistakes that end up costing them momentum, end up costing them ball games. So when you start to see Calvin Ridley take over a ball game, when you start to see L'Jarius Sneed getting turnovers and giving the ball back to the offense, when you start seeing more sack productivity and pressure from the best players up front, whether that's Jeffrey Simmons or, maybe at some point in time when we get Tavondre Sweat back in the lineup, Arden Key and Sebastian Joseph Day can get into the backfield and start creating havoc, right? But there was just too many times that we saw, Cam. I'm not going to say he was under duress a lot today, because I will say the offensive line did pass protect better today than we've seen over the past few weeks. They just weren't consistent, and that's the only thing I can say about that.
Yeah, and it just certainly led to another tough day, 26-0 to the Texans. We're going to break down Cam Ward's performance. I know B-Hop just talked about it there. Make sure you keep your comments coming. And on the other side of the break, we'll talk about him. We'll talk about Brian Callahan and other things, as you guys see on the background here, if you're live with us on YouTube, things that are giving us the two-tone blues this week for the Tennessee Titans. We'll be right back. All right, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. My favorite part, PrizePicks just added stacks, so if I want to ride with a player, I could select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Also, caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You could take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Maybe you like how fast you feel it, or the size, or the portability of the energy shot. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love, or be bold. Try something new in-store and online at www.5, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, or on Amazon today. All right, here we go, B-Hop. There we go. So we are going to be talking now about Cam Ward's day. He's 10 of 26, 93 yards, had the interception, of course, the costly one at the end that you talked about, flew off the hands of Elakayo Manor. Maybe could have placed it in a better target. We'll talk about that. And then right into the hands of the Texans. But obviously a lot of the comments, as we're seeing on the chat here, are about Cam Ward. I don't know how many fans maybe are turning on the young man or the rookie, but what did you make of his performance today? Because it seemed like to me that this is probably his toughest game as a Titan so far. And you're muted, B-Hop. Your mic.
I had to explain to my mom who Brandon Allen was, because she looks at me at some point in time during the game and she says, "Who's Cam Ward's backup? I'm just not impressed."
Oh no!
I said, "Mom, it's Brandon Allen, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to do better with the circumstances or with what we have right now." So it just went to show. I just basically brought that up because I can see from a family standpoint some of the frustration. Hassani in the chat, he says he disagrees with some of the things I said respectfully, and I appreciate you saying that. There might be something to that as far as the coaching and getting this team ready to play, right? But the thing is, how many plays do you think that the Titans have called over the past week? Different plays. I would probably say maybe 100 different plays.
Yes.
What works? Simple question. So I've given you 100 different options, but there isn't one thing that you can say this team can hang its hat on that actually works. So at what point in time, if I've given you so many options to work with and nothing seems to be sticking consistently, at the end of the day, is it me giving you more options, or is it you not making those options that I've given you work? So it is a tandem. I got to put you in the best position that I possibly can. And that's what Brian was talking about at the podium. It's my job to put this team in the best position that I can to allow them to be successful. That's the job of any coach, because coaches don't play. That's the difficult part about being a coach. The coach might have the game plan in mind. They might have all the perfect things for every scenario, but they're not the ones that are actually going out there on the field and executing the things that they call. So at some point, their responsibility stops. Now, if I've given you a ton of different options and you're not making any of them work to be able to be the identity of this team, at some point in time, it's got to rely on the Jimmies and Joes. So it is a combination of both. But I haven't seen them doing so many different things wide scale. Is everything questionable that a coach does during a game? Sure. Especially if it don't work, because revisionist history, I mean, good God, it's like It's 100%, isn't it? Because if I go back and say, man, I sure wish I could have done that. Well, guess what? You're right if it didn't work. So, you'll never be wrong in that instance. But when I call something, when we're working on something during the week and it's working during the week, what stops it from working on Sunday? It's either execution or the defense saw it coming, like the double pass that was going to throw back to Cam Ward, and Will Anderson was standing right there saying, yeah, go ahead. I dare you to throw it, because he saw that.
Which I didn't like as a first down call, by the way.
Exactly. Well, that could be true too. But I think it is a combination. You know what I'm saying? Now, Cam, at the end of the day, we had so much excitement about him because of what we saw in the preseason, because of what we saw, in just the way that he handled his responsibility of being the first pick of the draft and being one of the faces, if not the face of this franchise. But he's still a rookie. And there are not many rookies that can come in day one and kick the door in and start establishing themselves as, quote unquote, the dude. Peyton Manning won one game his rookie year when he went to the Colts. One. And I'm sure that there are a lot of Colts fans that weren't happy with what happened with him either. But guess what? The guy went on to have a Hall of Fame career. So while we would like to see him established, while we would like to see him perform at the level that doesn't make you feel that he's a rookie, at the end of the day, reality is what it is. He's a first-year player that's still learning the nuances of playing at the highest level. And at some point in time, I think that, with what we've seen so far, he'll limit the mistakes. He'll get more fluid and comfortable with what they're asking him to do. And he'll start making the plays that, will be necessary. Not missing dudes, 10 yards away. Going through a progression that allows you to be efficient, get the ball out of your hands fast enough. But then again, it's also a complement of things. Receivers getting themselves open, getting separation, a line that gives him time to block, and Cam making the right reads. All of these things have to work together for the play to be successful. If one part of that breaks down, just one part, it's least likely to happen.
Yeah. You kind of knew that there were going to be growing pains, obviously, throughout the entire season, being a rookie, Cam Ward being in his rookie year. I wanted to talk about some of I guess you mentioned him being a rookie this season. You had some accuracy issues today, it seemed like. The one to Io Manor that ricocheted off his hands for the interception. There were a couple out routes to Chig and Tyler, I think it was, that he just missed them. It was just missed throws. At what point do you say, yes, he's a rookie, but we got to take the training wheels off. He's got to play better.
Okay, so let's go back to Ryan Tannehill. Ryan, at some point in time, led this team to the playoffs. Am I right? At some point during his career? Okay, so he wasn't half bad, right? Then we start to see issues happen up front. Then all of a sudden, Ryan Tannehill becomes a liability. Those issues never were fixed when they took Will Levis with the first pick of the second round when he came in, and he struggled handsomely. We start to see Cam Ward experiencing the same issues that both Will Levis, who's the boy that we got from Pittsburgh? Rudolph.
Mason Rudolph, yes.
Mason Rudolph. Same thing. Him and Will were trading off starts, but neither one of them got separation from the other because they're all dealing with the same stuff. So in other words, the QB position is still dealing with the same issues going all the way back before they decided to part ways with Ryan Tannehill, which I still think they're paying him, actually. So it just shows you that there are some things that need to be fixed still. We need to have an established number one receiver, a dude that actually scares defenses. Unfortunately, Calvin's not playing like that guy. He's not playing like the guy that was in Atlanta or was in Jacksonville or that gave so much potential and promise. Does he have the ability? Of course he does. I think he's still a very talented player, but is he playing like that? No. Io Manor, a guy that's a rookie, not even a high pick, as a matter of fact, has really kind of come out of nowhere to be Cam's favorite target at this point. Chig Okonkwo, I think he had like one catch on 3 targets today. Not a lot of high volume productivity. So we're not seeing much from the players that are asked to help Cam Ward be the best version of himself. So I think that it's a combination of things. Cam can play better, but just like Brian, just like Jeff, just like some of the other players that were on this team mentioned, the better players, the best players are not playing at their best, and that makes a difference.
One thing you mentioned it earlier was that Tony Pollard did have some decent chunk plays in spots.
Yeah.
He had his first run of the season. Crazy to think his first run of the season over 10 yards came in this game in week 4. But then there were other questionable decisions in some of the play calls. What did you make of Bo Hardegree's calling the game? Because everybody made such a big deal about, okay, we're switching from Callahan to Bo Hardegree now.
I thought it was aggressive early on. We started to see them take some chances, especially when you know that protection hasn't been at its best. We saw some attempts at double passes. We saw them even attempt to really get the run game engaged until down and distance kind of takes that away from you. And you really needing to start coming up with those explosive plays downfield that give you an option, right? But I thought for the most part, what was different? There wasn't. Maybe it's because, like you said, this is still Brian Callahan's offense. But is Brian Callahan's offense so bad that they can't find one thing that works? You know what I mean? So I put it this way. If you put Cam Ward behind, say, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, or who's got another offense? Detroit Lions. They've got a great offensive line. And what I mean by that is not just in pass protection, keeping Cam healthy and upright, but also establishing the balance of the offense in the run game. When you're able to basically deal with third and very manageable down and distances because you're establishing yourself up front, then you'll start to see, Cam Ward look a lot better than he is if he's just dropping back to pass. And then you're just waiting for that 3.5 seconds to go by before he either needs to get rid of the ball or starts running with it. So that's why I prescribe to the RPO stuff, because Cam definitely has the ability to run the football. And what it does is it keeps defenses honest. You're not going to rush a quarterback that can run by you. And I think that ultimately we need to start making that a threat in this offense. I think Cam can be accurate enough to make plays downfield when given time, right? But also receivers need to come up with catches. They need to get themselves open and not be in such a contested catch situation as well. So, and the defense needs to give as many opportunities as they possibly can by getting turnovers. And I think in the very beginning, like in the first game or two, we saw a couple of turnovers by the defense, giving Cam as many opportunities as he could use to get back in that ball game. But offensively, they just weren't succinct. They weren't succinct enough to basically take advantage of the things that the defense was giving.
And when they have moved the pocket this season, Cam obviously seems comfortable. It's one of the things Brian Callahan talked about this week is when Cam gets out of the pocket or a play breaks down, he's constantly keeping his eyes downfield, just like the Alec Iomanner touchdown that he threw in the home opener. And just like today, when that first scrimmage that Cam had, he bombed one downfield to Iomanner after I think it was Will Anderson he escaped the sack from.
Right in his face. Yeah, Skip, remember, he even got the skip step or something like that, and then pointed the direction that he wanted Alec to go to, and then made the completion, right? So it shows you that if he was designed to do some of those things, how much more effective would he be? You know what I'm saying? If I were sitting there faking the dive and then holding on to that ball to see what the pass rush does and then take advantage of some of those lanes that the pass rush naturally creates when they're trying to sack me, then you're keeping them honest. And then when they start really slowing down that pass rush and you've got more time in the pocket because they're really not sure what you're going to do with it, then you can get some more of the explosive plays or even some of the slant stuff that, some of these receivers can give you as far as an option. So I just think that maybe that is part of the play calling that doesn't get called. Maybe we need to start looking more realistically at what this team's what some of their strengths are. You know what I mean? And I think that one of the strengths that we're not tapping into is Cam Ward's legs. I think that we could use more of that, if anything, just to give him more time to let other plays develop. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, certainly something he did well in college too. At every stop, that was something dynamic that he could bring to the table. That's for sure. Well, just to recap it there, Cam 10 of 26, 180 or 93 yards technically, one interception. The Titans failed to get 200 yards of offense today, which is just not going to get it done. On the other side of the break, we're going to talk about Brian Callahan. The future with him. I know that's going to be a hot topic of conversation this week and maybe here in the next few hours or coming days if what the Titans decide to do with their head coach there. So stay with us on the Titans Squad Show. We'll be right back. All right, what do you get when you have a bald eagle standing on top of a silverback gorilla riding a T-Rex? Confidence, pure confidence. And if you're looking something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. That's exactly where Rugiet's Go Long come in. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. The effects can last up to 36 hours, and that's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. Ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom? Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com. Promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure you use our code so they know we sent you. All right, B-Hop. Hi, man.
No, I'm what was it again? A ball.
It was it. Yeah.
And
we need the Titans to have some sort of confidence like that too, man. Hey, man, I just read them. It's what I do.
That's good stuff.
So we go to Brian Callahan now. Talking about somebody who needs some confidence as a head coach. The Titans are 0-4 this season. Brian Callahan now on a 10-game losing streak as head coach of the Titans. Of course, the big question is, do they, don't they? But my question to you, B-Hop, is what will a change do, if anything? Will a change do anything? Because it's still the same roster.
Do you think that the players don't like Brian Callahan? And I'm being kind of facetious when I ask the question because I think I already know the answer. But don't you think that they would do all that they could, not only for Brian Callahan, but for themselves if they could?
Sure.
So, in other words, what or who is going to automatically make them play and perform and execute better than they are right now? Is it going to be somebody else to come in there and do that? And if that's the case, what was Brian Callahan doing or saying that we weren't a part of that made them just not function at full capacity for this dude? I took some notes from the post-game press conference. Players and coaches, this is what Brian said. Players and coaches haven't found a way to win a game. Couldn't possess the ball. Can't give up a 2nd and 23. Not playing well and not fighting are two different things. Don't see effort issues. No one is coming to save you. I show up and do my job. We try to put ourselves in a position to win. Leading is hard right now. All I know is what I see every day in practice. We had our best week of practice, and that's what makes this frustrating. And finally, we're not playing well enough. We're not executing well enough to win. What did he say in those statements that was false? Not one thing. He was kind of being a master of stating the obvious, because all of those things are what contributed to the Titans not winning today. So at the end of the day, what is the new face going to do? He already gave up the play calling. He said, y'all want to blame me for not putting Cam Ward in the best position? Well, guess what, Bo? You do it. And what did Bo produce today? No points in 11 drives. 45 plays in total. Like you mentioned earlier, less than 200 yards of offense. So is someone that's outside of the facility right now going to come in and all of a sudden turn this thing around? You're still dealing with the same dudes that you're asking to call those plays, that you're calling those plays. So at the end of the day, it comes down to this giant mirror that needs to be in the locker room. And every single one of those dudes that's in it needs to look at themselves. And that's coaches and players alike. And you need to ask yourself, what are we doing to help this team? Or what are we doing that's not helping this team? And when you come up with those answers, that's when things change. At the end of the day, no John Gruden, no name somebody out there that's on the street right now that's not a part of a team. It's going to come in here and all of a sudden turn around the Titans and make them a better team than what we've seen through the first 4 weeks.
Hassani said John Gruden as soon as you said John Gruden. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Hassani said, bring back Jeff Fisher. I love Jeff more than anybody else on this thing call. So I don't know that Jeff has the minerals. Y'all might put Jeff in the ground dealing with all this frustrating stuff. He might have a heart attack coming back and trying to make this team win. So I don't know. And there's another Cash Mula. He said there's no aura in the locker room. That's a fact. Do these guys enjoy coming to work? Do these guys enjoy working together? Is there chemistry in that locker room that still makes them want to fight like what we heard at the very beginning of the season when Big Jeff and Cam Moore were monkeying around with each other and hanging out and goofing and fishing and all this other stuff? Where are those moments? Where's the camaraderie? Where's the cohesion? It don't exist. And I get it. When you're losing ball games, when the media is talking about calling for your head coach's job and all the things that aren't going right for this franchise, it's easy to then start saying, you know what, man, this sucks, and I don't want to be a part of it. But somebody in there has to say, you know what, fellas, enough's enough. We're not playing like a confident team. We're not playing like we're one of 31 franchises on the entire planet, which makes us unique, which makes us elite. Not everybody can do what we're doing, but we're acting like anybody can by having no confidence and no direction for what we're trying to accomplish.
You know, this past week, they seemed a little bit laxed, at least when talking to them throughout the locker room. And at first I thought, you know, maybe they're thinking, hey, it's early. There's still a lot of time to correct this stuff. But now it might, like, hindsight's 2020, of course. I look at it as like oh, well, here we go again. We're in the same place as we were when we were last year when we had a losing streak to end the season. I mean, my thing with it, B-Hop, is, like I said last show that we had, you talk about culture changers and aura changers in the locker room, as somebody said on the comments. Those have been all the rookies this season. And I think though it's great for Mike Borgonzi, the guy picking him, that's also kind of a problem that they're the guys that are bringing along the vets, not the other way around.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you would expect them to have those growing pains that rookies have. As a matter of fact, when I started, when I was a rookie, and I was not even close to the player that I was in, say, year 10, 11, or 12. So what we're starting to see is those players that are rookies that are put in that position, gaining the on-the-job experience that will lend to them being the dudes later on. You know what I'm saying? When we look back and see Borgonzi and Chad and Brian's draft picks, and they're now like Peter Skoronski. Yeah. You know, now look, I think Peter might have been who was the guy that was here before Mike Borgonzi? I can't.
Oh, Rand. Yeah, it was Rand Carson.
Peter a Rand pick? I think Peter might have been a Rand pick. But either way, when you start to see those guys grow in those positions and become better, it was going back to what they learned when they struggled that made them as good as they are. So we got a bunch of dudes that are in line to be studs. Now, the difference is, are we going to hold on to them? Right, A.J. Brown? Are we going to hold on to them? Name another player that's now balling out someplace else when we actually well, the Dolphins aren't doing that good right now because they've yet to win a game. Well, they could possibly beat the Jets, but they're 0-3 right now. We see what's your boy that was here last year that was that really led the team in receiving, and it's now down in Miami. Can't remember his name.
Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yeah, Nick Westbrook-Akine. Here's a guy that was making plays enough, but we didn't keep him. You know what I'm saying? Not to say that he was going to be the dude this year, but if you think about the strides that he made to improve this offense when he was here, I mean, I would imagine that he's just even better if he was that guy, not being buried behind Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he still is that dude. Imagine him still being here with Calvin and maybe and Alec being a guy. So once you do develop this talent, now it's about keeping it. It's assessing and finding the talent. It's developing the talent, and then it's keeping the talent. And right now, that talent is developing because these young players are now put in roles that are making them this guy. You know, can't say D-Hop Hassan because D-Hop was already established before he got here. You know what I mean? So, we're talking about young guys that are now put in that position. But you know what? I'm glad, Hassan, you brought up D-Hop, because what did D-Hop bring? D-Hop brought levity. D-Hop brought, working with younger players and making sure he tried to instill the confidence in these guys, not only by going out there making plays when he was asked to do it, when he could, but also just being, somewhat of a lean-on guy, like the old dude in the locker room. Sometimes it's not his physical appearance that makes a difference. It's his mental appearance. Like, what am I doing wrong, D-Hop? Let young receivers come to you and have him be the coach on the field in essence, So there are missing players like that do make a difference.
I want to go back to that Cash Mula comment of the no aura in the locker room, right? The no aura in the locker room comment there from him.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Snead earlier. You had to know this comments during the week were going to backfire. I mean, come on. And of course it comes on that 2nd and 33, where he gives it the 37-yard bomb to Collins. And it's like, dude, what are you doing? As soon as he said it in the locker room this week, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're 0-3. The last thing you need, especially a Texans offense that was struggling, is to give some sort of bulletin board stuff. And then, of course, one of the biggest defensive plays of the game, when you're supposed to get off the field, that's not supposed to happen. It happens.
It's they say excuses are like, right? And everybody's got one. And that ultimately is what it sounds like. But then again, you really can't say anything unless you're doing everything you can to put this team in a position to win. You know what I mean? So if you're struggling, keep your mouth shut. Because you're different than anybody else at this point. But the one biggest difference is what? The zeros behind your name. And that does put more pressure on a guy because they wouldn't compensate you like that if they didn't feel a certain way about you. If they didn't feel that you were a guy that could lead this team, if you were not the best at your position, first off, you wouldn't even be on the field if that were the case, let alone somebody spending some free agent dollars on you to get you here. So it's just, sometimes, and I will say, I'm not blaming the media, but sometimes we fall into this trap of answering questions that the media asks us without having the smarts to understand exactly the direction, because nobody has ever asked a question that there wasn't already an answer to it. They just want to hear you say it or not say it.
Sure.
It's just the way it goes. And if you're not savvy enough to understand exactly how this game is played, then you fall into these traps. Paul tried to get Brian today, didn't he? Brian said, I know what you're trying to do, Paul, and I'm not answering that ish. You even cussed.
It's bad at Brian Callahan's cussing because
but you know
as we talked about, he's a nice guy. It doesn't usually happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't usually get heated like that.
Somebody called for Buddy Ryan type stuff.
I saw that in the comments, yeah.
Buddy had us fighting every day in practice. And I mean every day in practice. Because Buddy didn't even know your name as a player. You were 72 butthole. Hey, 72 butthole. I promise you, I'm not even exaggerating, except he didn't say butthole. And he was the guy that actually pulled his defense off the field in the middle of practice because he said he's seen enough. He called our offense the chuck and duck when we were the run and shoot. So divisive is exactly what he was. But I don't know if you want that kind of personality, but you probably do want somebody that is just like, you know what? I'm not saying they want a Brian Kelly. You know what I mean? Brian was going off, this weekend, looking at his Bruins doing stuff or not doing stuff.
Man.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So while you want that balance, a guy that can get in your face, because what that does is it does make players more accountable, because it's one thing to not want to disappoint a guy that you care a lot about, that you want to see successful, right? But it's another thing when you know that if you don't do the right things, man, he's going to jerk a knot in your chain. You know what I'm saying? Or he's going to get in your face, and you just don't want that. You know what I mean? So you got to find that balance. You know who has that balance? Big Red in Kansas City. Andy Reid was getting in Travis Kelce's butt, wasn't he?
Yes.
But guess what? There's love there.
He knows that's what it takes to give that guy a jump start. He knows what it takes from each of those different guys.
He even chest bumped Travis,
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't expect Travis to two-hand jack Big Red to the ground because they have an appreciation and respect and a love for each other, right? But it is okay to express those things. Mike Munchak was my position coach for, I'll say, 3/4 of my playing career. And every now and then when I came to the sideline and things weren't going the way we go, man, they would get into it. You know what I mean? But I also had a respect and a love for him, not only because he was my coach, because he was my teammate as well, right? When I first came into the league. But it's okay to have these moments where you need to come to an understanding about what your job is as a coach and about what your job is as a player. And you need to make those two responsibilities work at the end of the day.
Real quick, for somebody in the chat, AMT Chris asked what Snead said. It was during the week. Snead said who when asked about Nico Collins. Actually, that was yours truly asked him who. What do you think about Nico Collins? He said who. And then after the game today, I don't know if people have seen it on Twitter, he said, well, yeah, Nico's a great player, so I guess he knows who he is now. That's for sure.
He knew who Nico Collins was.
He knew he was. Yeah. I like though how Tony Oden, he's trying to pull out some excuse. Said, "Hey, yeah, no, we like nameless, faceless opponents." That's kind of was. It wasn't egging him on. That's what he said earlier in this week. The cornerbacks coach for the Titans. Valiant effort to try to help your boy out, I guess. But anyways, so make sure to keep your comments coming. We're going to take a few of your guys' question in our final segment here on the other side of the break. We'll do our best to answer them for you because I'm sure you got a lot of questions in Titans land right now. Make sure to stick with us on the Titan Squad show when we return. All right, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action, that's for sure. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, so we are going to be taking some viewer comments and concerns. Yeah, I should say that as much. Real quick before we do that, B-Hop. This segment, I should say, is called Two-Tone Blues. So if there is one thing right now with the Titans that's giving you the two-tone blues more than anything, what is it? The sigh says it all.
I watched the game from the snap. Okay, that means I watched the game like I used to watch film, during the week, and that's the offensive line. It's not all their fault, but I wanted better tackle play. If you're going to spend the kind of money that you spent on 75, let's make it worth the money. JC is hurt. I thought that he was having a good beginning to the season, but now he's missed a couple of games straight, and they've got Udo, I can't even pronounce his first name.
Yeah, Ali Udo, yes.
And you got Ali that's in there. Put it this way. There are reasons why you have tight ends blocking on that right side.
Yeah. Got to give him help.
Yeah. Because how much more expensive could this offense be if you didn't have to protect him on that right side? Mm-hmm. So I want more from that because that's one less option that Cam has to throw to, if you think about it. If you got to have this dude in protecting and then get out into the flat, I mean, hell, he could have been running a skinny post or something that took the defense with him. He could be running something slot or just sit down on a dig route and come back to the ball and have Cam use him as an option. But he's in protection now. He's a 6 because it takes 6 dudes to block up front. So to me, that's where it's always going to start. Is that the only answer? Of course not. Because if we saw receivers that were just blowing the top off of defenses or getting themselves away from the defenders and making themselves available for Cam when he's ready to get rid of the football, then that wouldn't be an option. Cam's got to find them. They've got to get themselves open, and he needs time to be able to deliver an accurate ball. So it all is a combination of things. But I want an offensive line, bro, that just takes over. I want an offensive line that just, there's no question. I want you to lean and grind that defense into the ground. So in that way, my playbook is so much more expansive. I can do so many different things because everything is working. I want the ground game to win first. And that might sound a lot of boring football, 2 yards in a cloud of dust. But you know what wins football games? 2 yards in a cloud of dust. Because if you convert first downs, if you're running on this defense, then that means that most of the things that you're starting to look at in your playbook are going to work. It's just the way it works. You know what I'm saying? Because do you think that Cam Ward is more likely to complete a 3rd and 2 or a 3rd and 12?
Yeah, and that's been the issue all year. Yeah.
A massive difference in the two. And it's whether it's been from sacks and a loss of downs or penalties that then negate momentum and then create a longer distance to convert. Now it's an issue. But if I'm dealing with stuff that all of a sudden through the first 2 downs gets me something that's manageable in the 3rd and I'm able to stay on. In other words, here's the thing. If the Titans won the time of possession, I guarantee you they win a game. Think about that.
Yeah.
If you win time of possession, how do you win time of possession? By staying on the field.
Moving the chains.
by running more plays offensively than your opponent. And if I'm doing that, you're less likely to lose because you're winning all of these situations. You're wearing down the defense. Until the Titans win time of possession and run more plays than their opposition, we're going to continue to see them struggle.
Not to mention the defense stay fresher, unlike today when it seemed like by the end that they were
1,000%.
Yes,
think about this. I'm glad you brought that up because think about this. If we're putting points on that need to be answered by the other offense, that means that they're in passing situations that they're trying to catch up in the ball game, right? And that allows the defense to pin its ears back. This team could be way more effective applying pressure if they weren't getting gashed because everything seems to be working against us and working against an offense that, like today, held the ball for 20 more minutes. They held the ball for 38 minutes, bro. 38 minutes and ran 65 plays. That's the difference.
38 minutes to just under 22 for the Titans. Now, AMT Chrissy, this isn't exactly a question, but it will lead into a question. Cam Ward is a rookie doing what he can when he got no elite receiver, horrible O-line, and running for his life with a new system. He's already had two systems, which I will say it's not two new systems. It is just two new play callers. It is the same Brian Callahan system. But if you're the Titans, this is your most important asset that you have. And the growth of Cam Ward, the development of Cam Ward, that was priority number one this season. And whatever you do with the head coach, that is going to hit his development, and what you do with his development is going to be part of that determination. Now, if you are Cam Ward, B-Hop, this is the question here. How do you develop with seemingly so many issues kind of around you? And I'm not saying Cam Ward is exempt from all of these. He could play better too, but how do you develop the way that you want him, a rookie QB, to develop when there are so many issues?
Well, if you expect Cam Ward to look like Steve Young in his first year, you're going to be sadly disappointed. It's just a reality. So I would want to lessen some of the responsibility for me running this offense and spread the love. You know what I mean? Get Tony and Julius and even Chig, because he's like a giant fullback. You know what I'm saying? Get them involved in balancing out this offense. Take some of the pressure off of yourself. And you also be an extension of the run game itself. You know what I mean? So, but I will say this. Some of the best offenses that we've seen as of lately have really invested in winning the trenches. So I would suspect that while we're talking about getting the Jackson Smith and Jigbas and, you know, some of these other, you know, highly touted wide receivers and such, sorry. You need to get more involved with getting big bodies up front that you can draft and develop. Okay? Think of where they went with Peter. Imagine if we got 4 more Peters. Now you're talking about Peter was being mentioned as one of the best offensive linemen in the game.
He's been great this season. Yeah.
Right. And this is for a team that has yet to win a game. What if we had 4 more of those dudes? Or even 3 more of those guys? You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, Lloyd Cushenberry wasn't bad. Kevin Zeitler's not bad. He had a penalty today, but they only had like a couple of penalties that were actually accepted. So I'm not, going to poo-poo the veterans. But when you have no depth and when you've got just a couple of guys that you've actually spent draft equity on, at the end of the day, what are you developing? Guys that are available? Good teams don't give up good offensive linemen. Look at your boy Smith, Trey Smith from Kansas City. They didn't let his butt out the door, did they? They said, no, we're going to pay him to stay here. And we see the teams that are constantly in the playoff situation, they keep the core unit of guys up front. If you're a good offensive lineman, there's no way they're going to let you out the building.
And that's exactly what your point a couple shows ago that you made about the Dan Moore thing. If they really wanted him, they'd keep him.
Well, put it this way. Yeah, right. The Steelers, would he be starting right now for the Steelers, wouldn't he? But the Steelers said, oh, yeah, we're okay. You can go ahead and have him. And Aaron Rodgers won the first international game in Ireland today with seemingly maybe a better offensive line. So if a dude is available, he's available for a reason, unless he's playing so well that he's just super expensive and there's just no way in the world that we're going to foot the bill for this cat because we just can't afford it. There's other things that we need to be able to address other than that. But you got to win up front because that's where football is won and lost. Football is not won on deep routes. Football is not won on quarterback play. Football is won in the trenches, defensively and offensively. If you think I'm lying, Look what happened to the Chiefs last year when Patrick Mahomes was running for his life. And you can probably say that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in today's game, right? Did he look like that against the Eagles front four that never blitzed, that just rushed four? No, he didn't. So it's about winning up front. That's the biggest difference. And as a matter of fact, what was the Kansas City Chiefs' biggest liability last year in their offense, especially when it came to the playoffs? O-line.
Mm-hmm. So they got beat in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Exactly. So it just goes to show you, if you don't win up front, you barely have a chance to win.
You mentioned establishing the run game with Tony. One bit, I guess, of positive news is that Tajay Spears had the high ankle sprain and the injured reserve. He was put on IR. He is eligible to return by week 5, which would be next week against the Arizona Cardinals. So we'll see if the Titans can do it then. Hassani, we'll end on this one. He just says, thank you, B-Hop, providing the therapy for Titans fans that they needed during this time at 0-4. Of course, we might be in for a busy week depending what happens with the head coach. The Titans fall to 0-4 following the 26-0 loss to the Texans. They'll look to regroup this week with that matchup against the Cardinals next Sunday, just after a 3 o'clock kick Central Time. But we wanted to thank you guys for joining with us. We love seeing the comments.
Right.
we wanted to thank you guys for putting in the comments and being so active and listening with us live here on YouTube. Make sure you listen to us live twice a week. Also, you can get us wherever you get your podcasts on audio or video version as well. But for now, I'm Julian Minenstone. That's the legend Brad Hopkins. We'll see you guys later this week.